I've watched a video by Linda Masarira when she was aging and saying the reasons why everybody else shouldn't participate in the matches that the old man Geza is calling for. So many people have shared the same sentiment on what she's saying. That it is not about the people, it's about their selfish gains and the rest of it.
Zimbabweans and the Zimbabweans in the diaspora. My name is Linda Masarira, the President of Labour Economists and African Democrats. We are a political party that is Afrocentric, that believes in Afrocentric values, that believes in self-determination. We believe in justice, and we believe in constitutionalism. At this juncture in our lives, we are facing a whole lot of misinformation and gendered disinformation, and we are also facing a whole lot of hullabaloo, especially on social media spaces, about so-called 31 March protests, about rising up and fighting the regime, etc., you name it. But when I look at the agenda of the 31 March protests, I've got a lot of questions. We've got an individual in the name of Geza, who was actually a ZANU-PF Central Committee member, who came out guns blazing at his colleagues. And as an opposition figure and a pro-democracy activist, I asked myself so many questions. What agenda is Geza really standing for, including all his allies? Because from a bird's eye view, we see a person who's trying to find his way unconstitutionally to the feeding trough. We see a bitter man who has not come to terms with his lived realities and who wants to take advantage of his own personal situation to hype up a whole population, to uprise and remove a constitutionally elected government. As a constitutionalist, I never understood the way forward after 31 March. Yes, as Zimbabweans, we faced a lot of problems, ranging from economic volatility, currency volatility, economic hardships. We've got a labor issue. We just have a myriad of challenges that Zimbabweans are facing. But at the end of the day, as calling for protests, for one's self-preservation, or for ZANU-PF political succession battles, a thing that all Zimbabweans should participate in. We've got better things to do with our time. We need to build our country. We need to find each other and unite as a people before we even start talking of the way forward. Let us not allow desperation to make us follow anything and any person who seems to be sounding like they are advancing our agenda as the opposition forces. Yes, Zimbabweans have suffered enough, but the suffering that we have been enduring for years has been caused by a lot of dynamics that we cannot even understand at times. Yes, the nation is facing a high level of corruption. That is something we have to deal with. Yes, there are inequalities. That is something that we also have to deal with. But is conflict, anarchy, and despondency the way forward? I don't think so. I've been listening to the so-called audios and videos from whoever this comrade Nyokema Bunu is trying to threaten people, coerce people into violent conduct, coerce people to beat up people and all that. That is not who we are as Zimbabwean people. We are people who are peace-loving. We are people who are nurtured to be our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. It is unfortunate that due to our circumstances, we are being taught to be animals. We are not animals. We are human beings. We need to think about our future. We need to think about our children. And for the very reasons that I've stated, I am not participating in 31 March demonstrations. And I urge all progressive Zimbabweans not to participate in 31 March protests and demonstrations. They are not organic. They do not benefit the masses. They do not benefit any poor and vulnerable Zimbabwean. This is just political contestation, a political power struggle, and a ZANU-PF internal conflict that has got nothing to do with any ordinary Zimbabwean. Usaitiswe mwana wevu, usaitiswe nekuti izvi hazvinei newe. When we go back into the war of liberation, to the liberation struggle, when the comrades went to war, they promised justice, they promised land, they promised equality, and a whole lot of things that they did. And people knew that if we go and participate in the liberation struggle, I'm going to get land. Even if my relatives die or my father dies, we knew that the children who were left behind would get the land. Now you're being coerced to go to the streets. For what? To benefit what? What is the end game? If you do not know the end game, why are you participating in this? We need to be clear on what we want as Zimbabweans. We need to have a shared common national vision, and that we do not have yet. We need to be able to sit down as Zimbabweans,
which in some instances we all agree, yes, it is a power struggle, it is between themselves probably for the most part. But the other sentiment that other people are sharing is, yes, but we can take that opportunity and be able to bring about change. Linda is a very, very powerful woman. She has been an activist when things were difficult. She has been arrested, she has been thrown to prison, she's been persecuted in so many ways, trying to fight the Mugabe regime, I would say, because I don't know of late, I've never heard of her activities. So I respect her for that. But here is the thing. She says she represents constitutionalism, and the question now becomes, if you say you respect constitutionalism and you are pro-democracy and you are in an environment with those who are in power are not constitutionalists and they are not pro-democracy, and the democratic process is not being respected, and the constitution itself is not being respected, and the human rights are not being respected, the democratic process are undermined every single day. And it's interesting, these were the people who were calling that elections are being rigged and there's fraud in the elections. But today she's now saying there's a constitutionally elected government. Right? Really? If the elections are undermined and they are rigged, like we all know, which happens year in and year out, and you're dealing with people who do not respect that is very constitution that you're talking about, I'm afraid to say you coming in with your pro-constitutionalism and your pro-democracy is pointless, is useless. I mean, if you look at the Mugabe's era, do you think anybody else could have imagined of removing him? Nothing could have removed him except for the people with guns. It's the same situation. Ask yourself, why in Africa so many coups take place? Yes, we can talk about the Western influence, but the other side of it, that's the only way to remove them. Because you can't remove them any other way. The democratic processes are undermined. Your vote doesn't mean anything anyway. So how are you going to bring about the change that we desire as African people, for us to change our lives? You running an opposition party, for sure, you know, you're never going to win. You're never going to remove them from power. That's not how it works. You cannot remove a dictatorship by protesting in the street either. In as much as protesting, yes, it's kind of showing your disinterest and that you are not happy about the governance of a country, but that shit doesn't work in Africa. It's only in Europe and America, Canada, that the people who are in positions of power, they're actually conscious enough to respect the fact that they have failed or the people are not pleased by them, then they step down. Not here in Africa. They don't care. Protest, you can protest all you want. You know, we can all say if it was possible for everybody to go to the streets and we have 10 million people, 5 million people protesting in the streets for a number of days, maybe the leader will be pushed to understand that they need to leave. Yes, is one perspective of it, but I can't remember of anywhere where African politicians actually step down because of protest. They don't care. They don't. These are dictators. That's what they are. Don't be afraid of calling them the actual name that suits them, the way they operate. We talk about democracy in Africa, but this shit ain't democracy. This is not democracy. In as much as you want to be pro-democracy and constitutional and all that, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work because these people are always going to be in power, destroying the country every single day, and you have nothing to do. You cannot change the situation. You can never remove them from power using a pen, going to vote, or these democratic things that you talk about. The constitution that you're talking, these are Western ideas that does not apply in most of the African countries. There are countries like Botswana, in some senses South Africa, and them who are a little bit advanced up here in the head. They do mature politics and civilized politics, but not over there, my guy. You never gonna remove them without force. If there's no someone with a gun like the army, forget about them leaving office. We're gonna have more and more decades of struggle, and people are gonna suffer. That's it. And interesting enough, she spoke about the liberation struggle. That when people went to war to fight for anti-colonialism, for us to be freed from the colonial rule, she spoke about there was a purpose. There was a promise of equality. There was promise of getting land back. There was promise of all these things that were promised. And then it seems like all of a sudden now there is no promise to go and protest. Of course, there is a promise. You were promised equality. Did you get equality? Were you were promised to be free? Are you free? That's the question, right? If you cannot express your rights, if your rights are trampled upon every day, if the economy is being ruined, and the people who are in power, if you cannot challenge them and ask them the question, why are we misgoverning the country, then you're not free. Then there is a reason to go to the street to protest. There is reason for us to fight for change. There is a reason for us to liberate ourselves again from them. She has all these fantastic ideas and amazing ideas and pro-democracy and constitutionalism, but those tools work in certain environments. Only in environments where those in power actually also respect constitutionalism, and are also pro-democracy. We are in Africa, my dear. These leaders that we have are dictators. That's what they are. That's who they are. They can only remove that way by the army. That's the only people who can remove them, not you with a ballot paper. It's never gonna work. How long do you want to keep on being optimistic like this, and imagine that all of a sudden we can never stop trying, but the results are already showing you that this is not the way. That's why you see everywhere in Africa there's a lot of coups happening time and again, because that's the only way to remove dictators. You cannot remove them by any other means. Look at how they don't allow anybody to protest. They rig the election and they're corrupt to the core. What else? What other route is there? Tell me. What other route is there that you think you can ever use in order to change what's going on in the country, in order to change leadership, in order to change governance? You cannot hold them accountable, even if they say they don't want to leave, but at least someone must hold them accountable, right? Someone must hold them accountable so that they can actually deliver on their mandate, so that they can actually perform, so that they can stop being corrupt, so that they can stop stealing, so that they can stop buying Rolls Royces for a motorcade while these people are dying in the hospital. If you cannot hold them accountable and they just crush you and then destroy anything called opposition, nobody can speak, nobody can say this is wrong. What else is there? You tell me. Even if we think whatever we think of Geza and the army, this is unconstitutional. That's your fantasy that you do it the democratic way. If you think you're gonna do it the democratic way, speak to me in 10 years and you will tell me. There is nothing that you're gonna be able to do. There's no kind of change that you're gonna be able to effect. The idea behind supporting whoever this man is in whatever his agenda is, they seem to be the only people who have the power to do it. Any change is better than no change. We will see it there when we get there. That's how Africa has all kind of transformed. If you look at it from a series of dictators, and if someone comes like the example of the Sahel region with Ibrahim Traore and them, it was coup after coup, coup after coup. By chance, uh, they came across a very very powerful and good leader who is changing things. That's what we're talking about. At some point, if they finish removing each other, whatever the way they want to remove each other, if they can, maybe we will get lucky and get someone with a brain who will lead to the change that we need. But imagining that you ever remove them by being pro-democracy or pro-constitutionalist and blah, 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 it ain't going to happen, darling. It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to suffer forever, for years and decades and decades. That's the issue with Africa. We don't have a democracy in Africa. Don't talk about democracy. It's only a few countries which kind of respect these democratic values. Most of them, the rest of them are nothing but dictators. And she goes on to speak about, yeah, we as peace-loving people, we are being asked to become animals and this and that and this and that. I think of it differently. I think we are actually cowards. We are actually scared and little punkies, which is even the problem why we find ourselves in the situations that we are in, who are timid, who do not fight for their rights, who do not fight for change. You cannot tell me that. Imagine how many people are leaving the country because things are not right, because the situation is dire, and so many people are flocking outside of the country. When you leave and go to other countries, when you go to South Africa, that's when you become brave to cross through rivers and all that, to go through and being humiliated in other people's countries. In as much as you are being threatened of being slaughtered and being killed by other people in a different land, you would rather fight to stay there rather than coming back home and fight your own government, which is supposed to be fixing things so that you can have a good life. I don't think we are peace-loving people. I think we are cowards. That's exactly what it is. People are cowards. People are scared. Any other group of people in the world, I mean, look at how the Arabs and the Muslims stand for what they stand for. Those orcs are willing to do anything. If you go out of line against them, they will fight tooth and nail. You can do whatever you want. They will stand and fight for themselves. But us, we are not like that. That is actually the problem that we have. The reason that timidness, that cowardness of being scared and pretending that we are peace-loving people. I'm not advocating for violence. God forbid. We don't have to do that. But if we are being communicated to using violence, being forced to comply, being forced, being abused by this dictatorship, that we cannot speak against leadership when they are doing something that is clearly and blatantly wrong, destroying our futures, destroying our lives. It takes a lot. You're not thinking of it very very seriously. Like if you sit down and think properly, think that your own life and your own future and your children's future is being destroyed because of somebody else.